He walked away from her because he believed she couldn't give him children. 10 months later, he came back and found three identical newborns. 3 pairs of eyes that looked exactly like his. She was holding his sons the night he abandoned her future. Now he stands at her door, pale as a ghost, staring at the family he destroyed before it even existed. This is the story of a man who lost everything the moment he thought he had nothing to lose. And the woman who survived him. Hello, everyone. Before we begin, please help me reach 1,000 subscribers by hitting that subscribe button. And I wish you all a beautiful day. Now, let's dive into this emotional journey. The knock came at 11:47 p.m. Amara knew because she'd been watching the clock, counting down the minutes until midnight when she could justify calling it a day. 3 babies meant time moved in strange increments. 20-minute naps, 15-minute feeding cycles, the eternal 3 a.m., when the world felt hollow and her arms ached with a fullness that should have been shared. She wasn't expecting anyone. The neighbors knew better than to disturb her after 9. Her sister was in Atlanta. The only people who came to this door anymore were delivery drivers who left packages on the stoop and disappeared before she could say thank you. But this knock was different. Deliberate. Almost apologetic. She adjusted the baby in her left arm. Kai, she could tell by the small birthmark near his ear, and moved toward the door with the fluid exhaustion of a woman who'd learned to navigate her home in darkness. The other 2 were asleep upstairs in the nursery. Monitored by the camera, she checked obsessively on her phone. Through the peephole, she saw him. The world stopped. Started again. Stopped. Ji-hoon. Soaked through, his black hair plastered to his forehead, his suit, undoubtedly worth more than her monthly rent, clinging to shoulders that seemed narrower than she remembered. He wasn't looking at the door. He was looking down, at his hands, as if trying to remember what they were for. She should have closed the curtain, pretended she wasn't home, let him stand there until he understood that some doors, once closed, don't open again. Instead, she unlocked it. The sound made him look up. Their eyes met through the narrow opening, and she watched something crack in his expression, something she'd never seen before, not even on the day he'd handed her the divorce papers with hands that didn't shake. Amara. Her name in his mouth sounded like a prayer he'd forgotten how to finish. She didn't answer. Couldn't. Because Kai chose that moment to stir, his tiny fist uncurling against her collarbone, and she watched Ji-hoon's gaze drop to the bundle in her arms. Watched him go pale. Not the pale of shock. The pale of recognition. May I? His voice fractured. He swallowed. Tried again. May I come in? She should have said no. Should have asked him what gave him the right to show up at her door after 10 months of silence so complete it had its own gravity. Should have reminded him that he'd walked away believing her body was broken. That he'd chosen an empty future over the possibility of her. Instead, she stepped back. He entered slowly, like a man approaching a crime scene. His shoes left wet prints on the hardwood she'd refinished herself, another project completed in the 3rd trimester, when sleep became theoretical, and her hands needed purpose. The living room looked different than he remembered. She'd painted the walls a deep terracotta. Hung art, bold abstracts in ochre and navy that she'd collected from a gallery in Harlem. The furniture was new too. Nothing from their marriage remained except the small marble side table that had been her grandmother's. She'd erased him thoroughly, except for the 3 lives sleeping under her roof. Ji-hoon stopped in the center of the room. Stood there as if waiting for permission to exist in this space. His eyes kept returning to Kai, to the small face barely visible in the soft blanket, and she could see him doing the math. Measuring features, calculating probabilities. How old? His voice was barely above a whisper. 10 weeks. The number landed like a stone in still water. Ripples of understanding spread across his face. When... He stopped. Closed his eyes. When did you know? The day after you left. She said it simply, without malice. a fact delivered with the same emotional neutrality he'd used when he told her he wanted a divorce. That their marriage had become a graveyard of failed attempts. That he couldn't watch her hope anymore. Couldn't bear the monthly devastation in her eyes. He'd been kind about it. Clinical. As if kindness could soften the violence of abandonment. Now he stood in her living room, staring at the child in her arms, and she could see him rewinding, replaying, recalculating every assumption that had led him to this moment. You didn't tell me. It wasn't an accusation. More like a realization spoken aloud. A man discovering that the story he'd been telling himself had chapters he'd never read. You made your choice, Amara said quietly. I made mine. Kai stirred again, making the small mewling sound that meant he'd wake soon, hungry and insistent. She shifted him gently, her body moving with the automatic grace of new motherhood. The sway, the subtle bounce, the whispered shh that was more reflex than thought. Jihoon watched her with an expression she couldn't name. Something between agony and awe. There are more. He said it like a certainty, not a question. She nodded toward the ceiling. 2 more. Upstairs. Triplets. Yes. The word hung between them. Yes. 3 children. 3 lives conceived in the last days of their marriage, when they'd stopped trying and simply existed in the same space. 2 people too tired to keep performing hope. 3 heartbeats that had begun in the wreckage of their ending. He took a step toward her, stopped. His hands flexed at his sides as if reaching for something he had no right to touch. Can I? His voice broke completely this time. Can I see them? All of them? Amara looked at him for a long moment. This man who'd shared her bed for 4 years. Who'd held her through miscarriages and negative tests, and the slow erosion of dreams. Who'd kissed her forehead the morning he left, and told her she deserved someone who could give her what she needed. Who'd never imagined she'd been carrying it all along. Why are you here, Jihoon? The question was soft but unyielding. She needed to know if this was guilt or curiosity, duty or something else, something she didn't dare name. He met her eyes. His were dark, bottomless, reflecting the dim lamplight like water in a well. I don't know, he whispered. I was driving, and I ended up here. I didn't plan. He stopped. Laughed once, a broken sound. I haven't planned anything since the day I signed those papers. The confession startled her. Jihoon lived in plans. In strategies. In 5-year projections and quarterly goals. He didn't do spontaneity. Didn't do impulse. Except, apparently, tonight. Kai began to fuss in earnest now. Amara glanced at the clock. Midnight. Feeding time. Wait here, she said. She carried Kai to the kitchen, settling into the chair she'd positioned near the window. The city glowed beyond the glass. Brooklyn never truly slept, just dimmed to a softer frequency. She began to feed him, her body performing the ritual it had learned through necessity and repetition. From the living room, she heard nothing. No footsteps, no movement, just the presence of a man standing in the ruins of his own certainty. When Kai finished, she burped him gently, his small weight warm against her shoulder. She could bring Jihoon upstairs, show him the nursery, let him see the 2 other miracles sleeping in matching cribs. Or she could ask him to leave. Tell him that some returns arrived too late to change the ending. But when she walked back to the living room, she found him sitting on the floor, his back against the wall, his head in his hands. His shoulders shook slightly. No sound. Just the tremor of a man coming undone. She stood there, holding their son, watching her ex-husband cry without permission. And for the first time in 10 months, Amara felt something shift. Not forgiveness, not yet. But maybe the space where forgiveness could grow. Come on, she said quietly. I'll show you. The stairs creaked under their combined weight. Hers practiced and light, his hesitant and heavy with meaning. Amara led the way, Kai still drowsy in her arms, while Jihoon followed at a distance that felt both respectful and terrified. The nursery door was slightly ajar. Soft light spilled from the moon-shaped lamp she kept burning low through the night. She'd chosen everything in this room with deliberate care. The sage-green walls that reminded her of early morning calm, the blackout curtains with small embroidered stars, the rocking chair her sister had driven up from Atlanta in the back of a borrowed truck. Every detail was a promise, a declaration. She had done this without him. She pushed the door open. The room smelled of baby powder and clean cotton, of new life and old determination. 2 cribs stood side by side near the window, and in them, 2 perfect mirrors of the child she held. Jihoon stopped in the doorway, simply stopped, as if crossing the threshold would make everything real in a way he couldn't undo. "Their names," he whispered. "Please." Amara walked to the first crib, where a baby slept on his back, one arm flung above his head in absolute surrender to sleep. "This is Elijah." She moved to the second crib. This one slept curled on his side, his expression serious even in dreams. "And this is Emmanuel." "Kai," Jihoon said, looking at the baby in her arms. "Elijah, Emmanuel." He repeated the names like an incantation, like words that could rebuild a world. "They're beautiful." His voice carried a weight that had nothing to do with volume. "They look like you," Amara finished. "I know." It was undeniable. The shape of their eyes, dark, almond, intense even in infancy. The set of their mouths. The way Emmanuel frowned slightly in his sleep. The same expression Jihoon wore when reviewing contracts. Genetics had made her choice impossible to hide. Not that she'd tried. Jihoon took a step into the room. Then another. Moving like a man approaching something sacred that he desecrated without knowing. He stopped beside Elijah's crib, his hand hovering over the railing. "Can I?" Amara nodded. His fingers touched the crib's edge. Just touched it. As if even that small contact required permission from forces beyond her. She watched him look down at his son, their son, and saw his chest rise and fall with breaths that came too fast, too shallow. "I left you," he said. Not to her. To Elijah. To the sleeping child who knew nothing of abandonment or return. "I left all of you." The confession hung in the air like smoke. Amara settled Kai back into his crib, adjusting his blanket with hands that had learned to be steady even when her heart wasn't. She'd practiced this. The careful placement, the gentle tuck, the step back to ensure he stayed sleeping. "You didn't know," she said finally. "I should have known." Jihoon turned to face her, and in the soft light she could see the devastation in his features. "You were my wife. I should have felt it, should have seen..." "Seen what?" The question came out sharper than she intended. "The pregnancy tests that finally showed positive after you'd already moved out. The ultrasound appointment I went to alone where they told me there were 3 heartbeats. Which part exactly should you have felt from your penthouse in Manhattan?" He flinched. "Good. Let him feel it." "I called you," he said quietly. 17 times in the first month. You never answered." "I was busy." She gestured to the cribs. "Building this. Alone. Amara, do you know what it's like?" She continued, her voice low to keep from waking the babies, but vibrating with 10 months of contained fury. "To find out you're pregnant the day after your husband leaves you because he thinks you're barren? To sit in a doctor's office and hear triplets while trying to figure out if you can afford this brownstone on one income?" She was trembling now. She hadn't meant to do this. Hadn't meant to let him see how much it had cost her. But it poured out anyway. "I worked until I was 8 months pregnant. Took meetings between morning sickness. Assembled 3 cribs at 2 a.m. because the contractor I hired quit halfway through. I did every single thing alone, because you decided our story was over before it even began." Jihoon's hands were shaking. She could see them even in the dim light, trembling at his sides like leaves before a storm. "I'm sorry." The words were barely audible. "I'm so sorry." Sari doesn't raise children, Amara said. Sari doesn't wake up at 3 a.m. for feedings. Sari doesn't pay hospital bills or change diapers or wonder if you're enough for 3 tiny humans who need everything. She stopped, breathed, forced herself back from the edge of crying. Why are you here, Jehoon? Really? He was quiet for a long time. Outside, a siren wailed past, the ambient song of the city that never stopped, never slept, never cared about the small dramas happening in brownstone nurseries across Brooklyn. I've been drowning, he said finally. For 10 months, I've been drowning. Everyone congratulated me on the divorce, on making the smart choice, on not tying myself to... He stopped, swallowed, to a situation that wasn't working. Amara felt something cold settle in her chest. But every morning I woke up and you weren't there, and I told myself it was better, cleaner, that we'd both move on and find what we needed. Except I couldn't move. Couldn't think past the moment I walked out of your door. He turned back to the cribs, looking at each sleeping face as if memorizing features he'd never expected to see. 3 weeks ago, I was at a benefit gala, some charity event my company sponsors, and this woman asked me if I had children. It was small talk, meaningless, but I said no, and the word felt like swallowing glass. His hand reached out again, this time brushing Emmanuel's blanket with a touch so gentle it could have been imagined. I got in my car tonight after a board meeting, told my driver to just drive, and I ended up here, at the only place that ever felt like home. Amara closed her eyes, opened them. This isn't your home anymore. I know. You don't get to show up and I know. They don't know you. You're a stranger to them. I know. His voice broke completely. I know all of it. But I'm here anyway, and I'm asking. I'm begging for a chance to not be a stranger, to be something. Anything. Even if it's just the man who helps sometimes, who sends money, who... I don't need your money. The words came out harder than she meant. Pride, maybe, or the need to prove she'd survived without him, that his absence hadn't broken what mattered. Jehoon nodded slowly. Then what do you need? The question was simple, devastating. What did she need? She needed sleep. 8 consecutive hours where she didn't jolt awake checking breathing monitors. She needed help, someone to hold a baby while she showered. She needed family, her sister who was too far away, her mother who'd passed before seeing her grandchildren. She needed someone to witness this. The miracle of 3 lives built from nothing. But more than any of that, she needed to know if letting him in would heal something, or break it further. Kai made a sound in his sleep. Amara moved automatically, adjusting his position before he could wake fully. Behind her, she heard Jehoon's sharp intake of breath. You're amazing with them, he whispered. I'm their mother. It's not amazing. It's just what you do. No. He moved closer, stopping just behind her shoulder. Close enough that she could feel the heat of him, smell the rain still clinging to his clothes. It's more than that. You're everything they need, and you're their father. She said it without turning around. Biology doesn't stop being true because you weren't here. The silence that followed was different. Heavier, full of weight that had no name. Can I stay? The question was so quiet she almost missed it. Just tonight. I won't touch anything. Won't get in the way. I need to be near them. Near you. I need... The guest room, Amara heard herself say. Down the hall. There's a bathroom attached. She didn't look at him. Couldn't. If she did, she might see hope in his eyes, and she wasn't ready to be responsible for that yet. Thank you. The words carried 10 months of absence. Amara, thank you. He left the nursery quietly, his footsteps fading down the hall. She heard a door close, water running, the sounds of a man trying to wash away whatever had led him back to this doorstep. Amara stood alone in the soft light, surrounded by 3 sleeping miracles, and wondered if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life, or the only choice that ever mattered. Morning arrived with violence. Not the gentle kind. No soft light through curtains or bird songs welcoming the day. Instead, it came with 3 simultaneous cries at 6:47 a.m., a harmony of hunger that shattered whatever fragile peace the night had offered. Amara was already awake. She'd learned to sense the pre-cry stirrings, the small sounds that preceded the symphony. She was reaching for Kai when she heard footsteps in the hallway. Fast, uncertain. Then Jihoon appeared in the nursery doorway, still wearing yesterday's dress shirt, wrinkled now, untucked, his hair chaotic from what couldn't have been sleep. "What do I do?" he asked. Not, "Can I help?" or "Should I leave?" Just the essential question of a man confronted with need he didn't know how to meet. Amara lifted Kai, who'd escalated from fussing to proper crying. "Can you bring me Emmanuel?" The one on the right. He moved carefully, as if approaching something explosive. His hands hovered over Emmanuel before finally sliding beneath the small body with a delicacy that bordered on fear. The baby seemed enormous in his grasp. Or maybe Jihoon seemed smaller, reduced to someone who didn't trust his own strength. Like this? He held Emmanuel at an awkward distance, the baby's cries intensifying. Closer. Support his head. He won't break. Jihoon adjusted, pulling Emmanuel against his chest, and something happened to his face. A softening. A kind of destruction that looked like wonder. Emmanuel stopped crying. Just stopped. As if recognizing something in the heartbeat beneath the expensive cotton. Jihoon's voice was hoarse. "He knows me." "He knows safety," Amara corrected, but even she heard the gentleness in her correction. "Babies respond to calm. You're calm." It was a lie. Jihoon was the opposite of calm. She could see it in the rigid set of his shoulders, the too careful way he breathed. But Emmanuel didn't know that. Emmanuel only knew warm arms and a steady rhythm. "Elijah still needs," Amara began. "I'll get him." She watched Jihoon somehow manage to scoop Elijah while still holding Emmanuel, creating a small disaster of limbs and blankets that should have failed but didn't. He stood there with 2 babies, looking like a man who'd just caught lightning. Now what? "Now we feed them." She gestured to the chair. "Sit. I'll get the bottles." She'd prepared 4 bottles the night before, always made extra because triplets had turned her into someone who planned for chaos. The bottle warmer hummed softly on the dresser, ready for moments exactly like this. When she returned, Jihoon was in the rocking chair, both babies somehow positioned in his arms, their cries reduced to irritated murmurs. He looked up at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I used to imagine this," he said quietly. "Before, when we were trying. I'd picture myself holding our child, just one. I never imagined—" "3," she finished. "No one imagines 3. She handed him a bottle. "For Emmanuel. Angle it so he doesn't get air." He took it with the same intense focus he probably brought to board meetings, adjusting until Emmanuel latched on and began to drink with single-minded determination. Amara settled on the floor with Kai and the second bottle, leaving Elijah for after. She'd learned to stagger them, to create a rhythm that kept all 3 satisfied without completely destroying her. For several minutes, they simply existed in that space. The sound of babies drinking, the early light filtering through curtains. 2 people who'd promised forever and delivered 10 months. "I have a proposal," Jihoon said finally. Amara looked up. "No, you haven't heard it. I don't need to. Whatever you're about to suggest, moving back in, getting remarried, playing family, the answer is no." His jaw tightened. "I was going to suggest visiting rights, a schedule. Something official." "Oh." She felt something twist in her chest. Guilt, maybe, for assuming. "But since you brought it up," he continued, his voice careful, "would those things really be so terrible?" "Jihoon, I'm not asking for an answer today, or tomorrow. I'm asking you to let me prove I can be what they need, what you need. You can't just decide to be a father because you saw them once. I'm not deciding anything. He adjusted Emmanuel, who'd finished his bottle and was making small, satisfied sounds. I'm asking for permission to become one. There's a difference. Kai finished eating. Amara lifted him to her shoulder for burping, the practiced motion as natural as breathing now. You left because you couldn't handle the uncertainty. What happens when this gets hard? When they're sick? When they're screaming at 3 a.m. and nothing works? What happens when the reality doesn't match whatever romanticized version you've built in your head? The question landed like a physical thing. She watched him absorb it, saw the way his expression shifted from defensive to something raw. I don't know, he admitted. I've spent 10 months hating myself for leaving. I've built entire companies on certainty, and I threw away the most important thing in my life because I couldn't handle not knowing. You think I don't know how that sounds? How weak? How... Elijah started crying. Loud. Insistent. The kind of cry that meant, now. Amara reached for him, but Jihoon was already moving, somehow juggling Emmanuel to free one arm, scooping Elijah up with movements that were becoming less terrified and more instinctive. She handed him the third bottle, watched him feed his second son with the same intense concentration he'd given the first. I can't promise I won't mess this up, he said after a moment. I can't promise perfect, but I can promise I won't disappear again. I can promise I'll show up, every day, every feeding, every 3 a.m. nightmare. I'll be here or wherever you need me to be. You have a company to run, a life in Manhattan. I have 3 sons in Brooklyn. His eyes met hers. Everything else is negotiable. Amara felt something dangerous rising in her chest. Hope. The kind that had destroyed her before. The kind she'd buried under late-night feedings and solo pediatrician appointments. And the absolute certainty that she was alone in this. 1 month, she heard herself say. What? You want to prove you can do this? Fine. 1 month. You come here every day. You help with the routines. You learn how to change diapers and do laundry and function on 4 hours of sleep. And at the end of that month, if you're still here, still showing up, we talk about something more official. She was giving him an out, a timeline. A way to discover that reality didn't match whatever fantasy had driven him to her door last night. But Jihoon didn't look relieved. He looked determined. Every day, he confirmed. Every day. What time should I arrive? 6 a.m. That's when they wake up. She expected him to flinch, to negotiate. 6 a.m. For a man who probably had morning meetings and conference calls and a corner office that demanded his presence. Instead, he nodded. I'll be here at 5:50. Elijah finished his bottle. Jihoon lifted him with growing confidence, positioning the baby against his shoulder for burping. His hand, large, capable, built for signing contracts and making impossible decisions, patted the small back with heartbreaking gentleness. Elijah burped. Jihoon smiled. It was the first time she'd seen him smile in almost a year. The expression transformed his face, softened the harsh angles that power and isolation had carved. He looked younger. Lost. Found. Dangerous. I should go, he said quietly. Let you rest. They'll be up again soon. In 3 hours, Amara confirmed, like clockwork. He stood carefully, settling both babies back in their cribs with movements that were still uncertain but no longer terrified. He paused at each one, his hand hovering over their small bodies as if blessing them or asking forgiveness. At the door, he turned back. Amara? Yes? Thank you. For letting me stay. For giving me this chance. I know I don't deserve it. She wanted to argue, to tell him he was right. He didn't deserve it. But the truth was more complicated than that. More painful. They deserve to know their father, she said instead. This isn't about you or me. It's about them. He nodded. Understood what she wasn't saying. That this was conditional. That their history didn't erase itself just because he'd shown up crying in her living room. 5:50, he said. Don't be late. I won't. He left. She heard his footsteps on the stairs, the front door opening and closing with a softness that felt like consideration. Through the window, she watched him walk to a black car idling at the curb. His driver, who'd apparently waited all night. Jehoon paused before getting in, turned back to look at the brownstone, at the lit window of the nursery, at the life he'd abandoned that had continued without him. Then he climbed into the car and disappeared into the early morning traffic. Amara stood in the nursery, surrounded by 3 sleeping miracles, and wondered what she'd just set in motion. 1 month. 30 days to discover if a man could become a father, or if some absences were too vast to cross. Outside, the city woke up. Inside, 3 babies dreamed. And between them, a woman who'd survived abandonment tried to remember if she believed in second chances, or if believing was just another word for breaking. He arrived at 5:47. Amara knew because she'd been watching the street from the nursery window, telling herself she wasn't waiting for him while doing exactly that. The black car pulled up in the pre-dawn darkness, and Jehoon emerged carrying 2 things that made her chest tighten. A coffee carrier with 4 cups, and a leather bag that looked suspiciously like it held clothes. She met him at the door before he could knock. "You're early," she said. "I didn't want to be late." He offered her a coffee. "Oat milk, vanilla, 1 sugar. Unless you've changed." She hadn't. The fact that he remembered felt like a small violence. She took the cup. "The bag?" "Change of clothes. I thought, if I'm going to be here every day, I should keep things practical." He paused. "Is that presumptuous?" "It's logical." She stepped aside. "They're awake. You can hear them." The symphony had already started. 3 different pitches of need rising from upstairs. Jehoon moved past her, taking the stairs 2 at a time, and she followed with her coffee, watching him enter the nursery like a man reporting for duty. For the next 2 hours, she learned things about him she'd never known in 4 years of marriage. That he was meticulous about bottle temperature, testing each one on his wrist 3 times before feeding. That he hummed while changing diapers. Old Korean lullabies his mother must have taught him, the melody soft and aching. That he talked to the babies constantly, a low murmur of Korean and English mixed together, telling them about the morning traffic, the color of the sky, how Emmanuel had his grandmother's serious expression. "You're good at this," she said, surprising herself. He looked up from where he sat with Kai, mid-diaper change. "I'm terrified every second." That's what good looks like. Something passed between them. Recognition, maybe. The understanding that love and fear lived in the same room. By 8 a.m., all 3 babies were fed, changed, and back to sleep. Amara expected Jehoon to leave. He'd proven his point, shown up, done the work. Instead, he followed her to the kitchen. "What else needs doing?" She gestured at the sink full of bottles. Washing, sterilizing. Then there's laundry. They go through about 15 outfits a day between spit-up and blowouts. "Show me." So she did. Showed him how to properly clean bottle nipples, how to run the sterilizer, how to sort tiny clothes by color, even though they'd all end up stained anyway. He absorbed it all with the focus of someone studying a new language. "You don't have to do this," she said, watching him fold a onesie with careful precision. "You could hire help, nannies, a whole staff." "I don't want staff." His hand stilled. "I want to know them. Really know them. You can't do that from a distance. You run a billion-dollar company from a distance." "Exactly." He met her eyes. "And look how that turned out when I tried to run a marriage the same way." The confession hung between them, raw, undefended. Amara's phone buzzed. Her sister's face lit up the screen, their daily check-in call. She answered, stepping into the living room. "How are my nephews?" Her sister's voice was warm, familiar. "Exhausting." "Perfect. The usual." "And you? You sound different." Amara glanced toward the kitchen where she could hear water running, bottles clinking. "Jehoon's here." Silence. Then, "I'm sorry, what?" He showed up last night, saw the babies, asked for a chance to... She stopped. It's complicated. Complicated? Her sister's voice sharpened. Amara, he left you pregnant. He doesn't get to just waltz back in because he suddenly developed a conscience. I know. Do you? Because you're the strongest person I know. But you're also the one who forgives too easily. Who sees potential in people long after they've shown you exactly who they are. It's not about forgiveness, Amara said quietly. It's about them. They deserve to know their father. They deserve a father who doesn't abandon ship when things get hard. Which is why I'm giving him 30 days to prove he won't. Her sister sighed. 1 month. 1 month. And if he fails? Then at least I'll know I gave him the chance. After the call ended, she found Jehoon in the nursery again, standing over the cribs with an expression that looked like prayer. He didn't notice her at first, too absorbed in watching 3 small chests rise and fall. My sister thinks I'm making a mistake, she said from the doorway. He didn't turn around. Is she wrong? I don't know yet. Fair. He finally looked at her. For what it's worth, I think you're the bravest person I've ever met. Giving me this chance when you have every reason not to. It's not bravery, it's exhaustion. And maybe a little bit of curiosity about whether people can actually change. Can they? She thought about it. About the man who'd handed her divorce papers versus the man who'd just spent 2 hours learning to sterilize bottles. Ask me in 29 days. He smiled, sad, hopeful. I will. Day 7, and Jehoon hadn't missed a morning. He arrived before dawn with coffee and determination, stayed through the chaos of morning routines, and left only when all 3 babies napped. Then he returned for evening feedings, bringing dinner he'd ordered from restaurants he remembered she loved. Amara watched him transform. The corporate efficiency softened into something more human. He learned to function on broken sleep, to laugh when Elijah spit up on his 3rd shirt of the day, to sit in the rocking chair at 2 a.m., holding Kai through a crying spell, murmuring promises in Korean that she couldn't understand but felt anyway. You're different, she said on the 8th night, after the babies finally settled. They were in the kitchen, their new routine, these quiet moments after the storm. He was washing bottles, she was folding laundry. Domestic in a way their marriage had never been. How? He asked. Gentler, like you've remembered how to be soft. His hand stilled in the soapy water. I forgot I knew how. After I left, I turned everything into strategy. Made myself into someone who didn't need anything. Didn't feel anything. Did it work? For about 3 days. He laughed quietly. Then I spent 10 months pretending it worked while slowly falling apart. She set down the onesie she was folding. Why didn't you come back sooner? Pride, shame, fear that you'd moved on and didn't need me anymore. He turned to face her. And you had. Moved on, I mean. You built this whole life, this perfect system. Walking back into it felt like proving I was right, that you were better off without me. I wasn't better off, she said. I was surviving. There's a difference. Is there? Surviving is holding 3 babies and wondering if your arms will give out. Better would be sharing the weight. Something shifted in his expression. Hope, maybe. Or recognition. Let me share it, he said. Not just for 30 days. Permanently. Jehoon, I'm not asking you to take me back. I'm not asking for forgiveness or reconciliation or whatever word makes this easier to say no to. I'm asking to be their father. Officially, legally, let me be present. She wanted to say no. To protect herself from the possibility of him disappearing again. But she was tired. So tired of carrying everything alone. Okay, she whispered. His eyes widened. Okay? Okay to you being their father, to sharing custody, to building something that looks like co-parenting. She stepped closer. But not okay to us. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I'll take it. He said it fast, as if the words might evaporate. Whatever you're willing to give, I'll take it. Day 14, and everything changed. Amara woke to her phone ringing at 4 a.m., an hour before even the baby stirred. Jehoon's name on the screen made her heart stop. "What's wrong?" she answered. "I need you to bring the boys to the hospital." His voice was tight, controlled. "It's my mother. She's had a stroke." She was dressed in 3 minutes, the babies secured in car seats in 5. Jehoon's driver met her outside. He'd sent the car, was already at the hospital, couldn't leave his mother's side. The hospital was cold, fluorescent, the kind of place that stripped away pretense. She found Jehoon in a private waiting room, his suit jacket discarded, his shirt sleeves rolled up, his face carved from exhaustion. He stood when he saw her. Saw them. "You brought them." "Of course I did." His mother was in ICU, stable but serious. The doctors spoke in careful phrases. Next 48 hours, monitoring, too soon to tell. Jehoon translated it all for her, his voice mechanical, his eyes hollow. "She kept asking for you," he said quietly. "In the ambulance, she kept saying your name." Amara's throat tightened. "She never liked me. She loved you. She just didn't know how to say it." He looked at the babies, all 3 sleeping in their carrier. "She'll want to meet them." "Jehoon, she's in ICU." "I know, but if something happens..." His voice cracked. "She should meet her grandsons." So Amara waited while Jehoon spoke to doctors, pulled strings, made the impossible possible. And at 6 a.m. they were allowed in, one at a time, 5 minutes each. Jehoon went first with Emmanuel, then Elijah, finally Kai. When he emerged with Kai still sleeping against his chest, tears were streaming down his face. "She smiled," he whispered. She couldn't speak, but she smiled at each of them, like she'd been waiting her whole life to see their faces. Amara held him while he broke, right there in the sterile hallway, with 3 babies between them and machines beeping behind closed doors. She held him like she used to, when the world felt smaller and their problems seemed solvable. "I can't lose her," he said into her shoulder. "Not now. Not when she finally has this." "You won't," Amara said, knowing she couldn't promise that but saying it anyway. "She's strong. She'll fight." And she did. For 3 days, his mother fought. Jehoon barely left the hospital. Amara brought the babies twice a day, against protocol, against logic, but somehow it happened anyway. Money opened doors. Desperation opened hearts. On the 3rd day, his mother woke up. Day 30 arrived without ceremony. Jehoon showed up at 5:50, same as always, carrying coffee and the weight of a month's worth of proving. His mother was home now, recovering slowly, attended by nurses who reported that she asked about the babies constantly. Amara met him at the door, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. "It's been 30 days, she said finally. "It has. You showed up every single one." "I did." She stepped aside, let him enter. Watched him climb the stairs to the nursery, where 3 babies were already stirring, their internal clocks more reliable than any alarm. The morning routine unfolded like choreography they'd perfected. Him with Emmanuel and Elijah, her with Kai, moving around each other with practiced ease. Bottles warmed, diapers changed, small disasters averted. "I want to ask you something," Jehoon said, settling into the rocking chair with Emmanuel. "And you can say no. I'll understand if you say no." Amara looked up from where she sat cross-legged on the floor with Kai. "What?" "Move in with me." He said it quickly before courage failed. "Not as my wife. Not as anything except the mother of my children and someone I care about deeply. My penthouse has space. A whole floor could be the nursery. You'd have your own room, your own life. But we'd be together, raising them together. Actually together." She stared at him. "That's insane." "Maybe. We're divorced. I know. You can't just... People don't just..." She stopped. Breathed. "Why?" Because this month has been the happiest I've been in a year. Because watching you with them makes me remember what love looks like. Because I don't want to go back to my empty apartment and pretend I'm okay with seeing my sons a few hours a day. Jihoon, I'm not asking for romance. I'm asking for partnership. I'm asking to build something new that doesn't look like our marriage, but might look like a family. Kai finished his bottle. Amara lifted him automatically, the motion giving her time to think, to process what he was offering. It was practical. The penthouse had more space, better security, resources she couldn't provide alone, but it was also dangerous. Living with him, seeing him every day, watching him be the father she'd needed him to be while keeping her heart locked away. I need conditions, she said finally. Hope flared in his eyes. Anything. Separate bedrooms, separate lives outside of the babies. You don't get to question where I go or who I see. This is purely about giving them stability. Agreed. And if it doesn't work, if living together becomes too hard, we revisit. No guilt, no blame. Agreed. And therapy, for both of us. Together and separately. If we're going to do this, we do it right. Absolutely. She looked at him. Really looked. At the man who'd left her and the man who'd returned. At the father he'd become and the husband he'd been. They weren't the same person. Maybe that was the point. Okay, she whispered. His breath caught. Okay? Okay, we try. For them. He stood carefully, settling Emmanuel in his crib, then crossed to where she sat. Knelt down so they were eye level. Thank you. For giving me this chance. For letting me be part of this. I know I don't deserve it. Maybe not, she said. But they deserve to grow up with both parents trying. So we try. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his hand cupped her cheek. Gentle, reverent. I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving this was the right choice. Don't make promises you can't keep. I'm not. His thumb brushed away a tear she didn't know had fallen. I'm making a promise I won't break. Not again. Never again. 2 weeks later, they moved into the penthouse. The entire 40th floor transformed into a nursery that looked like something from a design magazine. 3 cribs positioned to catch morning light, a reading nook, toys neither of them had bought yet, but Jihoon insisted they'd need. Amara's room was across the hall, large, private, with a lock on the door that he promised never to test. His mother visited on the 3rd day, still weak but determined. She held each baby with tears streaming down her face, whispering blessings in Korean that Amara couldn't understand, but felt in her bones. She says they're miracles, Jihoon translated. She says you're a miracle for giving me this chance. Tell her I'm terrified. He spoke in Korean. His mother laughed, a sound like wind chimes, responded. She says all mothers are terrified. It means you're doing it right. That night, after the baby slept and his mother had been driven home, Amara found Jihoon on the balcony overlooking the city. Manhattan glittered below them. 1,000 lives lived in windows that glowed like stars. Do you think this will work? She asked, joining him. I think we'll make it work. He didn't look at her, just kept his eyes on the skyline. I think we've both survived worse than trying. What if we fail? Then we'll have tried. And they'll know we tried. That's more than a lot of kids get. She leaned against the railing, feeling the cool metal under her palms. I don't know if I can forgive you. I'm not asking you to. I don't know if I can love you again. I'm not asking for that either. He finally turned to face her. I'm asking for today. And tomorrow. And all the days we get to raise 3 miracles together. If that's all we ever are. Co-parents who used to be married. I'll take it. I'll be grateful for it. She studied his face. Found truth there. Maybe not the truth she wanted, but truth nonetheless. Ask me again in a year, she said, about forgiveness, about love, about all of it. I will. Inside, a baby cried. Then another. Then all 3. their symphony resuming, demanding, beautiful. They moved together without discussion. Back inside, up the hall, into the nursery where 3 lives waited for them. And maybe that was enough for now. Maybe love didn't have to be romantic to be real. Maybe family could be built from broken pieces and second chances, and 3 small heartbeats that proved miracles still happened. Maybe they were already building a new empire, one day at a time.